This is your 91.3 FM 3030 Sports Update. The Miami Heat are the NBA champions for the second year in a row after defeating the San Antonio Spurs 95-88 in Game 7 of the NBA Finals. LeBron James scored 37 points and was named MVP of the Finals for the second straight year. LeBron had this to say.
This team is amazing, and the vision that I had when I decided to come here is all coming true. Through adversity, through everything we've been through, we've been able to persevere and to win back-to-back championships. It's an unbelievable feeling, and I'm happy to be part of such a first-class organization.
Around the NBA, the Clippers have backed off on trade discussions with the Celtics for Kevin Garnett, but the teams remain in talks over head coach Doc Rivers. The belief is his acquisition would make Chris Paul want to stay. In the AHL, the Blackhawks and Bruins are tied 2-2 in the Stanley Cup Finals, with Game 5 taking place on Saturday at 8 p.m. in Chicago. Around the league, former Sabres Lindy Ruff was named as head coach of the Dallas Stars. Ruff had spent 15 years with the Sabres, making 8 playoff appearances, 4 trips to the Eastern Conference Finals, and losing the 1999 Cup Finals. In the NFL, Massachusetts authorities are expected to execute an arrest warrant for Patriots tight end Aaron Hernandez on obstruction of justice charges in connection with the homicide investigation. I'm AJ Speier, and this has been your 3030 Sports Update on 91.3 FM WBNY.
And now, the Sports Reporters Radio Show on WBNY.
Double the ball. Under a minute remaining. Green nearly lost it. Back to Ginobili. Inside Duncan. Across the lane. Duncan misses the tip. No good. And Bosh the rebound. 14 to shoot for Miami. James pulls up. Puts it in. 4-point lead. 35 for LeBron James. Timeout San Antonio.
And Tony Parker out of the game.
Ginobili inside to Duncan. Back to Ginobili. Ginobili out of control. Throws it away. And Duncan fouls James. Ginobili left his feet. And a critical turnover with 23.5 remaining. And this for Miami, the largest lead of the night. Battier taps it out to Chalmers. Wade throws it up to James. The Spurs will not foul. Final seconds. What a finish. It's back-to-back titles for the Heat. The 2013 NBA championship resides once again in Miami.
Hello and welcome, sports fans, to the Sports Reporters Radio Show. I'm the host, AJ Speier, alongside Aubrey Gibert. Last night, the Miami Heat finished off the San Antonio Spurs 95-88, winning the NBA championship for the second straight year. LeBron James winning his second straight NBA Finals MVP. He becomes just the second player to win in consecutive years the Finals MVP and the regular MVP. Great performance by LeBron James, 37 points. He goes with 12 rebounds in that game, coming off of a triple-double in Game 6, when arguably San Antonio probably should have won that game, but Miami coming through big time, and you have to figure that the big three is probably going to stick together this upcoming season, Aubrey.
Most likely they will stay together. If you ask me personally, should they stay together, I'll tell you no. But if they were, I would say that I think Chris Broussard said it really well earlier today, that you don't necessarily have to go out and get another big man, but maybe if you use Chris Bosh differently throughout the offense, I think that his ineffectiveness in terms of points, I think, has been more so just how he's been used. He's been used like a guard, honestly. If you look at the offense, he's out at three-point land. I mean, he was brought in to stretch the court originally, but obviously if the jump shot is not falling, he's an ineffective player. Just like any scorer, if you take away their bread and butter, they're nothing. So I feel as though with him, I think over the offseason, maybe if he goes down with Olajuwon, maybe go down there and learn some post moves. I think that he can really help this team if they cannot improve otherwise in terms of going down low in the post, posting up. Because really, if you look at Miami, that's the only piece they're missing. Even though they won back-to-back rings, I don't think this team as constructed right now can necessarily win next year. You know, I think the Eastern Conference is going to get much better next year. I mean, obviously, you have Chicago with Derrick Rose returning. You have Indiana, who's going to be just as good, who gave them a fight the last 2 seasons. You probably can throw the Knicks in there as well. So, I mean, that's at least 2 or 3 teams right there that have guys down low that can exploit Miami. And if they're not going to go out and get somebody due to the cap restraint, I think that Chris Bosh needs to improve his game from just being a pick and pop forward to a guy that can post up down low and really muscle with other guys because Tim Duncan exposed him in those finals.
When you look at Miami's run to the finals this year, obviously they had an easy matchup in the first round against the Milwaukee Bucks. All they had was really guards. They didn't have any big men in the court, and it really helped them going against Chicago. Then toward the end of that series with the Bulls, you had Luol Deng hurt, you had Kirk Heinrich hurt, and you already had Derrick Rose who had surgery who wasn't going to play. So they were at a weakness there too. You go up against Indiana, who has big men, but has no bench to really match the scoring, and it took advantage of that there. And then you look over at the series with San Antonio, and it was a great series for the first 4 games, I would say. And then, obviously, the Spurs starters really stepped up in Game 5 and took advantage of that, scoring over 100 points combined. But with Ginobili starting, they didn't have anybody really coming off the bench. It was Gary Neal as their best player, and it ended up being what really hurt them in the end. I believe in the last 3 games, the bench for the Miami Heat outscored them 71-36. So, obviously, there's some weaknesses that these teams that the Miami Heat had to face. And going forward in the next season, I obviously Derrick Rose is going to be healthy. You figure that Indiana's going to probably re-sign David West as a free agent. I've heard rumors that they might go after Jeff Teague as a free agent this year. A lot of teams like Jeff Teague, apparently. But you never know what's going to happen with Atlanta. You never know. Maybe Dwight Howard ends up going to Atlanta after all, even though Chris Paul, we don't know what's going to happen with that. But when I look with the Miami Heat, obviously Chris Bosh is their biggest weakness. He had 0 points in this game. They luckily got through this game. I believe if Tim Duncan had made that putback, this easily probably would have went to go overtime, and San Antonio probably would have taken advantage in overtime. But Tony Parker also didn't show up in the second half. He didn't have any points in this game. And you're talking about a guy who had a hamstring injury throughout the entire postseason, and it really started to creep up on him after Game 5 when they had that great performance by the whole team.
Yeah. Obviously, when you talk about a guy like Tony Parker who depends so much on getting into the lane, coming off of screens and everything, you can obviously say the hamstring is a big issue with him, especially when he said that at any point in time it could have torn, any cut or turn. In the post game yesterday, he said that it was not an excuse. I don't really think that yesterday, specifically in the second half, had to do anything with his hamstring. I think it had simply to do with the fact that he had LeBron James guarding him. You're talking about a 6'8", 250-pound small forward checking a 6'1", 6'2" point guard who's take away 50 pounds from LeBron and maybe more.
And he's hampered by how much he can really drive in.
Yeah.
That's why he had 0 points in drives.
Yeah, and in order for him to get a shot off, obviously he has to come off a screen or something has to be done. He cannot. You can easily say, "Oh, he can beat LeBron with his quickness," but LeBron's just one of those natural freaks of nature where he possesses the size and the speed. Where LeBron's recovery on defense is very remarkable in terms. If Parker was to get by him, I think LeBron's wingspan would make up for that, and he would be able to block the shot. So I think it was really tough for Parker to really get any groove. And I think if anybody showed fatigue, I didn't really see much fatigue from the team, but Parker specifically, I've seen a lot of fatigue in his eyes. You can tell. I don't think I've seen much fatigue in Duncan. Obviously, he wasn't going to come out and give that same 31 points and 17 rebounds game like he did in Game 6, but I just feel as though, Parker has been the catalyst of that team all season. I think, honestly, since Game 5 in the first half, he had, like you said, he hasn't been the same. I think he was 6 of 20 from the field in Game 6, something like that. So I think really since that Game 5 first half, I want to say, he really hasn't been the same player.
And when the series first started, they didn't have LeBron James guarding Tony Parker, but they did at the very end, and he ended up getting that lucky teardrop that went into the hoop, and they ended up winning Game 1 there. But once he had the hamstring injury, we've seen it twice in these games. I believe it was Game 4. He also disappeared in the second half and didn't have any points. But you have Tony Parker's injury. You have Manu Ginobili becoming Mr. Turnover Machine. You have Popovich taking out Duncan and Parker at key moments of the game. You had that dumb decision on April 12th where he ended up getting rid of Steven Jackson and bringing in Tracy McGrady, who you don't use at all in the postseason when you need offensive scoring. So there's a lot of concern with this team going forward for San Antonio. I don't know what to make of what their roster is going to look like next year because they have Manu Ginobili as a free agent. He made $14.1 million this past year. Obviously, it's not going to be the same case. He's 35 years old, going to be 36. You don't know how much you're going to pay for him. I assume it'll probably be a one-year deal, probably around $1 million to $2 million. But it's just going to be interesting to see what happens with this team, and I'm really curious to see what's going to happen to Manu Ginobili going forward because his turnovers really cost his team the game.
Yeah, and let me take a step back in terms of last night's game. I think last night's game had everything to do with Miami doing everything right more so than San Antonio doing something wrong. I mean, if you look at the series, I think LeBron said it best. If you listen to his post game interview, I usually don't listen to a lot of things he says because a lot of stuff I just I don't really pay attention to that kind of stuff. But if you really listen to what he said, he talked about how throughout the whole series, he looked at the film and he realized that San Antonio was giving him the jump shot. No matter where he was on the court, they were going to give him that jump shot.
Like the 2007 finals.
You have to give respect where respect is due. Him and Wade hit shots that you don't usually think they'll make. The whole series, it was sag the lane, make LeBron and Dwayne Wade take jump shots. Even when they formed in 2010, that was always their weakness, is always just pack the lane, let LeBron and Wade shoot jump shots. And now, and if they ever got a jump shot like LeBron did this year, I mean, he shot career high 56% from the field, 46% from three-point land. They're both virtually unstoppable if they can hit that jump shot on a consistent basis. There's nothing you can do with them because you can't. What do? Do you sag off and let them shoot it? I mean, if you get up on them, LeBron's going to drive right by you. So I feel last night really was just LeBron and Dwayne Wade hitting shots that I can't blame Popovich for because they didn't make those shots all series. So you have to give respect where respect is due. They hit the shots last night when it counted, and you could say, Popovich did this or he did this in Game 6, he did this in Game 7. But at the end of the day, it got them to the point where they should have won Game 6 with that same strategy, and it got them, and they still were in that game in Game 7 last night, even with LeBron hitting 5 of 10 threes, which he usually, that's admiration for LeBron to hit 5 of 10 threes.
When you're wide open, you're going to make that every time.
So I feel as though it had so much more to do with LeBron just embracing the fact that they're going to give me the jump shot more so than what San Antonio did wrong. I mean, they did make mistakes, don't get me wrong, and Ginobili played horrible. I think that's a big thing. He was turning the ball over like crazy. I mean, it was like a stat. He turned the ball over, I think, like almost 40% of the time he had the ball in his hands. I mean,
yeah.
And then at the end of the game, I do agree with Parker going out, it put the ball into Ginobili's hands, and I don't think that was the right decision because of the fact that he was turning the ball over so much in the series. But
he did have that one big three towards the end of the game, but that was about it. I mean, there's that one play.
A no-show to me.
There's a one play where he goes underneath the basket, and he looks immediately to Tim Duncan, and everyone on the court kind of expected that because Tony Parker's not out there. Danny Green hadn't been really on fire, and Kawhi Leonard's the guy who had been driving into the lane the entire night, but he was beyond the arc. It was kind of obvious he was going to go to Tim Duncan there. I just didn't understand that coaching decision by Greg Popovich. A lot of mistakes made by him. He's a legendary coach, I'll give you that, but he did not bring it in this series. But when you talk about LeBron James, I mean, he's improved his shooting percentage for the last 6 years. I mean, I watched First Take just like you did today. I saw Brian Windhurst's interview from ESPN Miami on First Take. But apparently with LeBron James, he came into the league as a guy who could do layups and dunks right away, and he had to work on his shot, and he brought his Cleveland shooting coach everywhere he went on vacation, and that's how he developed his game as a jump shooter. And when San Antonio first started applying pressure to him, making him have to shoot jumpers, he was a little confused at the time. But then, as you mentioned, he checked his stats and saw that he had shot 56% from the field, 41% from beyond the arc this season. And he said, you know what, I'm going to take it. And he became more comfortable, and that's when he started averaging 30-plus points.
Yeah. And I also think, besides the fact that he has improved as a jump shooter, I think a lot of it has to do with simply I think this goes for any shooter. It's just having that confidence to shoot it. I mean, if you look at LeBron, I mean, I don't think that his mechanics or anything changed from last night than it did from games 1 through 6. I think it was simply the fact that he embraced the idea that they're gonna give him that shot and take it. I think same thing with Dwayne Wade. I think they both really hesitated a lot this series, and I think they just they took it sometime, and sometimes they want to go to the hole. And I think it really played into what San Antonio wanted them to do because they wanted them to be indecisive and hesitate on the shot. But from last night, it was a total different mindset I've seen from Wade and LeBron, where they both just said, we're going to take the shots. And if that would have occurred earlier, this might not even have gone 7 because they both possess the abilities to hit the shot. It's just, do you trust yourself enough to hit that shot?
And one of the big things for the Spurs in the fourth quarter, Ginobili, Parker, and Duncan shot a combined 4 for 13 in the fourth quarter, and you're not going to win many games when your big three can't produce. But when you look over at the Miami Heat with Dwayne Wade and LeBron James, Dwayne Wade mentioned this before during the season, during the series. Before LeBron James and everybody else came over there, he passed because he wanted to. Now he's passing because he feels he's forced to do so. And I feel like once him and LeBron James finally reach that comfort level, you're going to see this team be even better than they already are going forward.
Yeah. I said earlier that, I think that there's teams that can challenge Miami in terms of, Chicago, Indiana. But let me say this as well. Just like I told you before this series started, everything that I said in terms of this finals was contingent on Wade not showing up. But I said if Wade shows up, though.
We didn't think Tony Parker was going to be hurt either.
Yeah.
Though.
If Wade shows up, it's a total different ballgame for the Miami Heat. When Dwayne Wade is 100% healthy, Miami's virtually unbeatable. Let's be honest. You have a LeBron. You have pretty much 2 of the top 5 players in the league. It's going to be virtually impossible. Then you have role players that can stretch the court like a Mike Miller, Ray Allen. If Dwayne Wade can somehow do something with his knees this summer, go to Germany, get the Kobe treatment, do something, and come back 100% healthy, I don't think you have to really. You don't have to change his team. When I said that, I said a contingent on. I don't plan on him being 100% next year, but maybe 85. But if he's 100% healthy, I don't think you make any changes.
It's not guaranteed to necessarily work, the Kobe treatment, because you saw Andrew Bynum go to Germany for the same thing on his knee. He didn't play the entire season. Now, whether it's because he was lazy and didn't want to be in Philadelphia, we'll never know. That's for him to know. But for Dwayne Wade, from what I heard, what Miami plans to do, they told him just take some rest, take some time off. If you remember this past offseason, he had surgery and then he had to go to the Olympics, and then they went right into the basketball season. So he really didn't have much time to relax on that knee and get the rest it needs. He'll get it this offseason. Curious to see what comes for him and LeBron James going forward. We don't know if Chris Bosh is going to be in the team because obviously he's the most tradable asset at this point. You have to think. DeMarcus Cousins, I've heard reports in Sacramento, wants a max contract. He's a guy, if he's willing to reduce his offer, but in order to win a championship, I would consider that for both teams because Sacramento's about to lose a superstar. They have Tyreek Evans, who's a restricted free agent. They need somebody who they can market around. I think Chris Bosh could be that perfect guy for them. DeMarcus Cousins, he's kind of a head case, but I feel like if he's with LeBron James and Dwayne Wade, with the right leadership on that team, I feel like he could be a great player going forward, and he gives them exactly what they need. A post presence, a guy who can get rebounds, everything you want out of DeMarcus Cousins.
Oh, if I'm the Miami Heat, if Sacramento offers me that trade, I'm taking that, no doubt about it. I mean, you're talking about a guy who, in my estimation, is going to be a top 3 center in the league in a year or two.
If he matures.
Yeah. I mean, you're talking about a guy who averages 18 and 10, but simply the talent is there. He has the talent.
He doesn't have the talent in Sacramento, though.
Yeah, he doesn't have the talent around him, but, I mean, in terms of him and the talent, he has the talent to be a dominant center in this league. And then you put him around a Dwayne Wade and a LeBron James where the attention is not all on him. He would be getting single coverage every single time down the court. And then you're talking about a guy who can possibly match up with a Roy Hibbert. Because let's be honest, the class of the centers in the East is Roy Hibbert at this point. That's the guy that you have to match up for.
Well, Joakim Noah, too.
He doesn't but he doesn't kill you offensively. He's not a guy who's going to back you down and score.
He's had plantar fasciitis issues, which I really think has limited his offensive game. But yes, I agree with you. He's a great defender.
They're both the 2 dominant centers. And if you bring a DeMarcus Cousins in, I mean, I think you can probably stamp Miami for another ring at least. I think that obviously the maturity is a big issue with Cousins, but I think if you bring him in a championship mentality locker room like the Miami Heat with LeBron James and Dwayne Wade, who can really sit him down and say, "Listen, you want a ring or two or no? What do you want to do?" So I think that it would be an opening eyeball for him and a guy you could possibly keep long term and possibly keep LeBron in Miami. Next year, LeBron, Dwayne Wade, and Chris Bosh can all opt out next year of their contracts. And what better way of doing that? Because let's be honest, Wade is going to be in Miami for the rest of his career. Wade, to me, is like Kobe in L.A. He's going to play until he wants to keep playing. He gave them their only 3 rings in Miami. He gave them the only 3 rings. And, I mean, let's be honest, he's honestly the second best shooting guard in the league behind Kobe.
I don't know if it's a guarantee he's going to stay in Miami, because I think if Chicago had an opening, he might consider going back home.
I had thought about that.
But that's the only way I will see him leaving Miami.
But I think that he would have to leave. I don't think Miami would give him an ultimatum. Let's put it like that. I don't think Miami would say you have to either choose one or the other.
If LeBron James were to leave, I don't think at this point he wants to be the only superstar anymore, Dwayne Wade. I think he'd be willing to work with Derrick Rose in Chicago, and I feel like that'd be a great fit because you have the point guard who can distribute. Wade doesn't have to be on the ball all the time, and I think that would really help his game out.
Go back home. He's from Chicago as well.
But what we haven't even talked about what this Miami Heat team was. I mean, obviously LeBron James had a great performance. Dwayne Wade's really come up big. Chris Bosh hasn't really been there. But talk about these bench players. People like Ray Allen, Mike Miller, who ended up being put in a starting role. You have Mario Chalmers, who's coming up big with that big third-quarter shot and the buzzer beater. Remind me of those days with Kansas against Memphis. And you also had a player like Shane Battier, who hit 6 3-pointers in this game. They have what I've been trying to say every other team doesn't have. They don't have the depth and bench that these players, they want to win a championship, and that's why they're going to Miami.
Yeah. I mean, you're talking about all those guys you just mentioned are guys that space the floor, guys that if you want to leave them open, go ahead and leave them open.
Yeah, because if you want to
you're going to pay the price.
If you want to double LeBron, they'll be open.
Yeah, and I mean, let's look at last night, for instance. Shane Battier, I think he went 6 of 6 from 3-point land last night.
I mean, they were contested toward the end of his shots.
So he's perfect from the field. And then you look at last year's Game 5 of the NBA Finals. I think Mike Miller hit 7. So both games, you had a guy who didn't really contribute the whole series, and then has a big game 5 or Game 7, whatever, the big determining game where they step up. Ray Allen stepped up in Game 6, hit some clutch shots for them down the stretch. Shane Battier was kind of non-existent this series. But Mike Miller, I thought, stepped up a lot in the previous series versus Indiana. I think he was doing good until they started him. I think that really kind of took away from what he's done. But he still spaces the floor like we talked about last week. So, I mean, while they aren't guys that necessarily can take the ball to the rim, they're still guys that make defenses have to look at them. And it only helps LeBron and Dwayne Wade slashing because you can't leave them open. Yeah, and they paid the price last night.
And that's one of the things that really worked in San Antonio's favor early in the series when Tony Parker had that hamstring healthy. He was able to drive in and dish it out. Players like Danny Green were hitting threes. You at one point mentioned to me that you thought Danny Green was the MVP of the finals with all the three-pointers he had. And I really couldn't disagree with you. I was going to say co-MVPs, but from what I saw, the reason why he was able to hit all those three-pointers, though, is because defenses were on Tony Parker. And the difference between that and Miami is that San Antonio's aware of the shooters. No one was really afraid of Danny Green because he hadn't shown anything to this point. He's like a Paul George who you really didn't respect coming into the series, but then he started to get respect. And you saw in Game 6 and Game 7 when they shifted attention to him, he couldn't produce. I mean, in Game 7, 1 of 12 from the field.
Yeah, and me and you talked about this last week about how, going forward that Green will be a guy that, might be a glue to this team, but a guy who's not there yet as a superstar. I think it really showed his weakness, these last couple of games. At the end of the day, he still broke an NBA record. I think he hit like 27 or 28 threes, which is remarkable I can see if that was over the play, but in a 6-7 game series to hit that many threes is remarkable. He broke Ray Allen's streak, who's the best 3-point shooter of all time. So
we have a caller. Hello, you're on the Sports Reporters Radio Show.
Yeah, I was listening to you guys a little bit here earlier when you were saying it was about how the game came down to the end with Greg Popovich, and I was what the bottom line was. Their big three, Miami's big three. I'm a Spurs fan, so and I'm a Ginobili fan. But let's get this straight right off the bat. Their big three outplayed San Antonio's big three. And at the bitter end of that game, Tim Duncan had that chance, to seal it off with that. The shots did not fall. And Ginobili was just passing the ball off. He had no confidence in the shot. When Ginobili's got it, he's got it. He didn't have it. And basically Chris Bosh, too. He was like the secret weapon in that one. Although Dwayne Wade and LeBron did hit their shots, Bosh did a hell of a job. Their big three outplayed, the big three of San Antonio.
Yeah, I definitely have to agree with that. But from what I've seen so far from San Antonio, this whole entire season, it's no longer the big three with Ginobili being included in that picture. I think it's more Kawhi Leonard now, the 21-year-old who they acquired in that deal for George Hill with Indiana. He had a huge game in this one, 19 points, 16 rebounds. But the thing is, they really need to identify where they want to go with this team going forward. I mean, if Parker is injured with a hamstring, teams are going to double cover Tim Duncan. You have to figure out what you want to do with your offense going forward.
Yeah, I agree too. I mean, will Ginobili be back? I mean, it's the times are changing, and they're going to have to figure out what they're going to do. But the Spurs are, they're a class organization, and they've always, figured out ways, to win. Although it took them a couple years here to get back to the finals. They got that. You got to always respect them, and finding people too that that are respectable. Like when Tim Duncan went down to one dude earlier in the game, I don't know, it was one of the earlier games. He came back and helped him up. Anybody else would have probably kicked him and then fled down the line. But they got they have that respect in San Antonio, and anybody who's really anybody, like you said, they're either going to play in Miami or they're going to play in San Antonio, because obviously that old debacle with the Lakers, they got everybody who's anybody, and they ain't doing in squat. So we'll see. All I wanted to say was go Spurs.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice to see some encouraged Spurs fans still. Just real quick too. We talked about Danny Green being a guy that the Spurs will build around.
I think they're building around Kawhi Leonard.
Yeah, I was gonna say, can we please, despite what happened, can we please? I mean, if somebody opened my eyes more than in this series than anybody, was Kawhi Leonard.
And we didn't even notice
he
him
might be a
until
superstar.
We didn't even notice
honestly.
him until Game 7. To be honest with you,
I've seen it the whole series.
Yeah, but he has been that quiet. Where you're more focused on Parker, you're more focused on Duncan, you're more focused on Ginobili. Kawhi Leonard's been the guy who's been in charge of covering LeBron James, and that's been a really difficult task. We really haven't seen him much on offense because he's been getting tired out by having to cover LeBron. It's a tough task.
Yeah. I think he still averages double-double every game. I mean, he was getting 22 and 16. One game he had 19 and 10. So, I mean, to have to check LeBron James.
At 21 years old.
Yeah, 21 years old. I think he's only 3 or 4 years in the league. That was that trade they did with George Hill.
Not even 3. I think it's 1 or 2 years.
Yeah, people, frowned upon that trade because they said, George Hill was a proven commodity for trading him for a guy who's young. And, kudos to the Spurs for that trade.
They could have used George Hill in this series. We can all.
They could have used Leonard more though than they did George Hill. I think George Hill at this point in his career, he's starting for the Indiana Pacers. I don't think he's really a good point guard. I don't even think he's really that much of a point guard. He's more of a shooting guard. He's more of a combo guard. Let's put it like that. And Leonard is just. I think he could be he made that jump. Yeah, that series I think from like a Paul George did, like where you already know he's a great defender. He can hit the open jump shot, he can slash, but he really showed up in that series. I'm sorry. He had a couple putback dunks. He had one on Mike Miller where he just clobbered it on him. And I really feel as though the Spurs need to build around him in the future and his jump shot has improved remarkably from college, to the pros.
And he went to San Diego State, which is not really one of those top-tier schools, but, great job by the San Antonio Spurs scouting department. I believe he was the 12th or 13th overall pick in that draft.
Yep.
Usually you find these kind of superstars in the top 5, but kudos to the Spurs for Leonard. I think they'll be fine once Tim Duncan decides to retire. And if Danny Green can develop his game a little bit more, I feel like they can really replace Manu Ginobili going forward. It's just a matter of adding pieces now. And I think now that Manu Ginobili's $14.1 million contract is gone off their roster, they can address and get more pieces. The only thing is they need to get a few more veteran players. Not exactly a Steven Jackson, because apparently he clashed with his personality with Greg Popovich. He didn't want to admit that Danny Green and Manu Ginobili were better than him. And you can kind of see his point in this series. At times, they're both inconsistent kind of players. But I really feel like if they had Steven Jackson in the series, it would have been a totally different series.
Yeah, it's easy to say that. And, everybody's come out and said that because, he gives you that spacing on the court. He gives you that guy who can take you off the dribble, which Danny Green couldn't do.
And he gives you that Rasheed Wallace toughness.
Yep, gives you that toughness. He's a guy who can, you could have put on LeBron at times. I don't want to go that far and say that, they would have won if he would have played. Because honestly, they should have won in Game 6 anyway without him. So
yeah, but it should have never been that close. I believe if they had Steven Jackson, this would have been a totally different series. It wouldn't have been...
In terms of the amount of games played?
I don't think it would have been as close, because you look at how much pressure was on the starters for the Spurs because they don't have anybody off the bench. The best player is Gary Neal. He's not exactly a guy who scares you off the bench. I mean, you look at Miami, they have Ray Allen, Shane Battier coming off the bench. Sometimes it was Mike Miller as well.
I mean, I felt as though both benches were very inconsistent in the series,
But at least there was always production on the Miami side.
Yeah. In terms of three-point shots, yes, you got production from either Ray Allen or a Mike Miller or something like that. I thought Gary Neal had his moments in the series, though, where he
only
really
had
balled.
one game, really, and that was a 24-point game. I believe it was game three.
I mean, Boris Diaw didn't necessarily kill you on the stat sheet, but he came in and contributed a lot. I thought he moved the ball well. He defended LeBron. I think he was 1 of 9, and I think the game 4 they were talking about. So, I mean, those guys didn't give you necessarily points, but they gave you intangibles. But obviously, like the caller said, Miami's big three outplayed San Antonio's big three, definitely. Ginobili didn't step up. It was kind of like last year with Harden. He didn't step up for the Oklahoma City Thunder versus Miami. So kudos to Miami for at least shutting down one of a team's 3 options. And when
you have 2 of the top 5 players in the NBA, you always have a chance. Even if you're playing against a great team like the Spurs, a great coach team, you always have a chance when you have the top 2-5 players. You can't defend both of them.
And superstars win Game 7s. I truly believe that, San Antonio wasn't the most talented team, but they were smarter. But in a Game 7 like that, superstars usually win those games.
All right, when we come back from the break, we're going to end up talking about the Clippers and Celtics' possible deal to get Doc Rivers, whether or not they're breaching anything by going after Kevin Garnett as well, whether Paul Pierce will go there. If the Clippers end up with all 3 of those people, how good will this team be, assuming Chris Paul also resigns? Should the Miami Heat be worried? How does this impact the rest of the league? We'll talk about it next on the Sports Reporters Radio Show.
Sports Replay, located on 1614 Niagara Falls Boulevard in Tonawanda, buys, sells, and repairs new and used sporting goods since 1999. They specialize in hockey, snowboards, skiing, paintball, airsoft, and much, much more. Call in at 716-834-6595. Also on Facebook. Once again, Sports Replay at 1614 Niagara Falls Boulevard, a quarter mile off the 290.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, it is a distinct pleasure of the management to present to you the evening star attraction. Here they are.
This is 91.3 FM WBNY Buffalo.
We're on a mission from God.
Brought to you by the Student Activity Fee at Buffalo State College.
Are you the police?
No, ma'am. We're musicians.
Here at WBNY, if you don't like the songs we play, hey, at least we don't play this.
Cheers to the freaking weekend. I drink to that. Hey, hey. Don't let the bastards get you down. Now everybody eat a Toblerone.
See? That sucked, didn't it? Now, here's some good music on BNY.
This is your 91.3 FM 3030 Sports Update.
After days of speculation in the NHL, the Dallas Stars have named former Sabre head coach Lindy Ruff to be their new head man, replacing Glenn Gulutzan. Meanwhile, the Buffalo Sabres re-signed backup goaltender Jonas Unruff to a 2-year deal worth $1.25 million per year. Game 5 will take place tomorrow night in the Stanley Cup Finals, where the Chicago Blackhawks will look to regain momentum in their best-of-7 series. Puck drops at 8 p.m. with the series currently tied at 2 apiece. In the NBA, after narrowly escaping Game 6, the Miami Heat defeated the San Antonio Spurs last night in Game 7 to win their second consecutive NBA Finals championship. LeBron James finished with 37 points and 12 rebounds to secure his second consecutive Finals MVP, joining only Bill Russell and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. After ongoing talks, the Los Angeles Clippers have solely zoned in on acquiring Celtics head coach Doc Rivers based on NBA regulations. In football, Patriots tight end Aaron Hernandez is expected to have a warrant out for his arrest following obstruction of justice in connection to the murder of 27-year-old Odin Lloyd early Monday morning in Massachusetts. Hernandez was seen with Lloyd that morning. In baseball, the Buffalo Bisons will open up a 4-game homestand starting tonight versus the Durham Bulls. Shortstop Jose Reyes will play in the series as he continues his rehab stint after injuring his ankle. First pitch tonight will be at 7:05 p.m. This is Aubrey Gibert, and this has been your 3030 Sports Update here on 91.3 FM WBNY.
And now, the Sports Reporters Radio Show on WBNY.
I know Doc Rivers, what he's accomplished. He's a champion. What he's been able to get out of this Boston squad has been remarkable. But no coach is worth you sacrificing young pieces. There are other coaches available. The Clippers have all, if what they've said is true, if what the people close to them said is true, they got Lionel Hollins in the mix. They have possibly Brian Shaw in the mix and Byron Scott. Those guys haven't accomplished exactly what Doc has because he sealed the deal by winning. But they've done enough, and they're putting together enough of a roster. If they're going to really use Eric Bledsoe to potentially turn another deal, that they're going to have some players. So I'd be more interested if I were the Clippers in seeing what these other coaches could do with this roster and Chris Paul than doing all this for Doc Rivers.
And we're back on the Sports Reporters Radio Show. I'm the host, AJ Speier, alongside Aubrey Gibert. What you just heard there was Jamel Hill talking about the possible deal between the Los Angeles Clippers and the Boston Celtics regarding Doc Rivers' future in Boston. There's been reports that it was going to be Doc Rivers for 2 first-round draft picks. There was also a separate report saying that it was going to be Kevin Garnett for DeAndre Jordan. But you can't do both deals according to the NBA. There'd be a violation, as we saw with the Chris Paul to Los Angeles deal a few years back. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with this deal, because clearly both players are meant to be in a trade together.
I mean, I honestly disagree with Jamel Hill in terms of, not necessarily the part about giving up young talent for Doc Rivers, but I also feel as though when you're talking about this coaching search, if you're going to bring up Doc Rivers, I feel like Doc Rivers is plan A, and anybody below that is a D or an F. I just really don't think that Lionel Hollins and Brian Shaw, those guys are good coaches, don't get me wrong, but they're not comparable to Doc Rivers whatsoever. And if all it's going to take to get Doc Rivers to LA is 2 first-round draft picks, I'm giving them to right now. No doubt about it.
She doesn't want to give DeAndre Jordan, though, for Kevin Garnett.
Proven winner. I wouldn't even mind seeing this roster as is right now with no trades with Doc Rivers. I think that really, if you talk about Vinny Del Negro and Doc Rivers, there's not a comparison.
And there's also a possibility that Boston declines Paul Pierce's team option of $50 million, takes a $5 million buyout. He becomes a free agent, decides to sign with the Clippers, and they let Caron Butler go wherever they want. You could have potentially Chris Paul, Paul Pierce, Blake Griffin, DeAndre Jordan, and your choice of who you want to be a shooting guard. Could be Eric Bledsoe. They could bring back Chauncey Billups. You never know.
Yeah, and they've been rumored to want Kevin Garnett since last year, but now they're solely zoning in on just Doc Rivers, and I think that that's the right move.
Chris Paul wants that.
And if that's what Chris Paul wants, the best point guard in the NBA, the guy that you want to re-sign with you, that's the best way to do it. I look at Doc Rivers and I look at guys he's developed over the years. You look at Rajon Rondo, a guy who, even when they won their championship, really was just the other guy in the lineup. Wasn't anywhere close to where he is now. He's developed Rondo into a top 5, top 10 point guard easily.
And they don't get along.
Yeah, and they didn't even get along. You look at a Kevin Garnett, I think that when you look at how, Kevin Garnett was already established before he got to Boston, but I think that Doc Rivers really made him even better than what he really was. I think that he can do wonders for Blake Griffin if you are to keep Blake Griffin and not trade him. I think that would be a big move, to get Blake Griffin to become. Because I think that's the biggest thing with the Clippers in terms of if you're going to keep this roster where it is, the development of Blake Griffin and DeAndre Jordan is key.
Griffin has to get tougher and be the guy he was. I believe it was at Oklahoma, where he was really going aggressive after those rebounds. I feel like that injury his rookie year really kind of limited his potential so far in the NBA.
Yeah, and I think that he needs to develop a post game. I think that you can't just dunk every single time down the court like him and DeAndre Jordan do. When you have so much money invested in those two players, you need more production out of them. Let's be honest.
Would you say that Blake Griffin's become too Hollywood since he's joined the Clippers? I mean, you see all the commercials he's in nowadays.
I don't want to say he got too Hollywood, but I mean, yes, people are obviously going to say, he's on his commercials, he's on a lot of things, so maybe it's taken away from his time. But then somebody brought it up to me the other day, and I thought about it, and it really made sense. You look at Chris Paul and Blake Griffin, guys like that who are, in all these commercials or on TV. You look at LeBron James. Do you see him in the commercials?
He's getting on more commercials now, I believe.
But I think that he could easily be on any commercial he wanted to, but when he got to Miami, like he said, he's a businessman, and everything has been about business with him ever since he's gotten there. All he's been focused on is winning a ring. He's not worried about the TV stuff. He was worried about. He had all that stuff in Cleveland.
Well, the thing is, he ruined it when he ended up doing the decision thing and saying not 1 or not 3, not 4, not 5. A lot of people were really mad at him for that, but now that he's won 2 championships, I think you'll see more endorsement deals swing LeBron James' way. You saw during the NBA Finals, the new headphones. He's in that one commercial showing those off, talking to Dr. Dre about that.
Yeah. I think he could be in way more, but I think he's just so focused now where, he's gotten everything he's wanted in this league, and the only thing left now is rings.
Well, the one thing that really hurt him was that he had the Olympics, so he had to focus on basketball now. Now he's talking about taking some time off to get away from basketball. I got a feeling you're going to see some commercials being shot during that time. I mean, he's won 2 rings now. You can't really say anything negative
satisfied.
about him.
I know he's not satisfied for a fact.
Yeah, I know, but you get a chance to make more money in your pocket. You're definitely going to go after it. And with the 2 rings, nobody can really say anything negative about him. And it's really hard to hate LeBron James at this point now, too. And
yeah, I agree with that.
I liked his interview at the very end of the game, in the post game. He said, "I ain't got no worries." Yeah. I know he was referencing the song, obviously, but I mean, it's true. I mean, all the pressure's gone. He's won 2 rings. He's been to the finals in 3 years. He's really delivered on what he said he was going to do.
Yeah, I think, like Stephen A. has said before, when he won that first ring, I think all the pressure is off of him. It lets him play free. Okay, let's say they lost last year in the finals, and this is the Game 7 this year. I'm not sure if he even takes those shots that he took last night, because I think the pressure would have gotten to him. I think he wouldn't have known he wouldn't have been as confident. I think that first ring really lets him play comfortable now, where he can really play his game. Doesn't have to play a game that everybody wants him to play.
That and checking your shots and seeing I make 50% of my shots from the field. I mean, you're going to get confident easily on that.
Yeah. So, going back to you're talking about the Clippers, though, I think that the Clippers need to make this move for Doc Rivers. I think he can work wonders for a Chris Paul and a Blake Griffin if you were to keep those guys. And then if you possibly, there's been rumors that they're looking to send Eric Bledsoe and Blake Griffin to L.A. the Lakers for Dwight Howard. I just feel as though either with the roster they have right now or the roster they're looking to have by trading Bledsoe or something like that, I think Doc Rivers is the best coach no matter what, because he can adjust to whatever you give him. He's not a coach that you have to have a certain personnel. He can adjust his personnel easily.
And the crazy part is, if I told you 5 years ago that the Los Angeles Clippers would become the team in Los Angeles, you'd think I was crazy. But now, you have Kobe Bryant coming off the injury. You have the unknown future with Dwight Howard. He's possibly on the way out. Kobe's making $30+ million this season. They're not really going to have the money to go after these pieces. They've already invested in Gasol, Steve Nash, maybe Dwight Howard. They want to throw a max contract over there. They're not going to become relevant this year, and Clippers are going to take over Los Angeles, in my opinion, to get this deal.
Yeah, this year I think that, it'll probably be LA's year to shine in terms of the Clippers, with Kobe probably not being ready for their season opener, not until later on in the season. Obviously the only way they'll be relevant is if Dwight Howard was to return. Going past next year, though, I think the Lakers, barring signing Dwight Howard, have one player under payroll, which would be Steve Nash. So maybe they get LeBron James. I'm throwing scenarios out there at this point, but pretty much it's contingent on if they re-sign Dwight Howard. And then, Kobe even said that he might want to play 2 more seasons, so maybe he wants to come back for another year. I think that with his injury and him not playing a full season this year, unless he does come back from the get-go, which I don't believe is going to occur, I think he has at least 1 more year in him after that. So,
well, the thing with LeBron James is, if you win another championship, so let's just say he wins another championship this year, he gets his 3rd ring. He's making a lot of money. There's no taxes. You're in Miami, South Beach. Why would you want to leave?
He wants more. If you want to be considered the best or one of the best,
stay with one franchise. Michael Jordan did it. Look what happened.
But he's already broken that barrier by leaving Cleveland, which is his hometown. So therefore, you can't. I don't think it would look as good as if he went to another whole different team and be a 3rd. But I think it depends on where Dwayne Wade's health is by the end of next year. I think if he's, where he is right now, or even just a little bit better, then yeah, probably you could stay. But if he's not going to get any better, I think for him as a businessman, it would be best for him to move on. Maybe go back to Cleveland, pair up with a Kyrie Irving, or I know Carmelo can opt out next year. Maybe he comes to New York. Maybe they form another big 3 somehow.
I don't think LeBron wants anything to do with Carmelo Anthony. Look how many shots Carmelo Anthony takes.
It would work.
Well, on the bright side, he could defer it all he
wants.
It
would work. They would make. I think if you look at Carmelo in terms of even an Olympic team, he plays better when he has better talent around him. And I think with LeBron James, the number one key with him is you could put anybody with him because of the fact that he's so unselfish. And I think that I don't think it would occur, but if it were to occur, it would work because, it would take that much more pressure off of LeBron to shoot because he knows Carmelo can do that. And then on the defensive end, Carmelo can depend on LeBron to defend. So, it depends on what the team makeup is and where they go and all that. But if you were to talk about chemistry, I think that they would work personally better than Dwayne Wade and LeBron do because what LeBron isn't as good at in terms of with his shooting, Carmelo excels at. They both excel at different areas of their game.
I think Carmelo Anthony will be a New York Knick for life. I mean, we look at it, Amari Stoudemire's contract's up after next year. So there's no real reason to leave. I mean, you're going to have all that cap room. You can go after another max free agent then. There's no point.
Yeah.
But
maybe LeBron comes there.
But for LeBron James, he's staying in Miami for the rest of his career. I'm sold on this. He's not going back to Cleveland. I don't care that he lives in Akron. There's no taxes in Miami. It's beautiful weather there.
Are we really talking about taxes right now? Do you think LeBron James really cares about taxes?
It's more money in your pocket, so yeah.
He's making over hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. Why does it matter?
Hey, just more money. And it's a perfect vacation spot. If he wants to really relax, he's already in Miami.
Yeah, true. He can just fly there, though. He probably has his own jet, for all we know.
Yeah, he has got a lot of money, and he was able to bring his shooting coach with him everywhere from Cleveland. But if LeBron James goes on to win like ring after ring after ring down the line, do we forget about those Cleveland days? And he's known as a Miami Heat for life?
Yeah, it depends on how many rings he wins. I think as of right now, nobody talks about Cleveland anymore. I think a lot of people, in terms, especially that 2007 Finals versus San Antonio, people don't even count that because of the weak supporting cast he had around him.
Those are basically his college days.
Yeah, I think that if he had great players around him and he didn't win, then you can say okay, he didn't get it done in Cleveland. But I think the pressure of that being his hometown and them not really bringing anybody in to help him as much as he needed, I think you can honestly put those days behind him and move on to the days now, because at the end of the day, no matter who he's playing with, top 5 player or not, he's the best player on the planet. So you have to give him that credit.
All right, and before we get into the show, I just want to bring up one other point about Chris Paul. It really impacts across the entire NBA because you have teams like the Dallas Mavericks and the Atlanta Hawks coveting him. Maybe the Houston Rockets going after Chris Paul. If he doesn't go there, the next best point guard on the market is Jeff Teague, who's currently a restricted free agent with the Atlanta Hawks. We could see a scenario where, remember last year, Roy Hibbert, he was offered a max contract by Portland. Indiana had to match, and now they're kind of screwed over with the cap over there. You could see that happen in Atlanta because Jeff Teague's a guy who at 25 years old is coming off his best season of his career. I believe he had 14 points he averaged this season, around 7 assists per game. So he's on the way up. He's a fast-paced kind of point guard, lightning fast, and he likes to pass the ball a lot, kind of like a Tony Parker. So you could definitely see Atlanta trying to keep Jeff Teague on their team. I understand why you'd want Chris Paul because obviously he's the best point guard alive, but I feel like the best fit for them would be to keep Jeff Teague and go after a player like Andre Iguodala, maybe even a Monta Ellis, and they can build from there with Al Horford being power forward. They just have to bring in another center.
Yeah, totally agree with what your analyst on that is. I think Atlanta needs another center. More than anything, Dwight Howard would be a perfect fit for them. Get Horford back at the 4 position and stop playing out of position at the 5.
Dude, he's a 2010 guy when he plays power forward.
He was 2010 at the center position. So I imagine what he can do at the power forward position. He can do even more.
Yeah, and that's out of position for him.
So,
and then I believe what I see coming forward is probably Houston going after Josh Smith and putting him in their lineup because you don't really need a center. I don't understand all these talks about Dwight Howard going to Houston. They have Omar Asik. Why do you need to go after Dwight Howard? Yes, he's
your backup. Then if you have a chance to go at the best, go after the best player at that position in the league. Why not? No matter who you have on your team,
all right,
the best at that position.
But what does Dwight Howard provide that Omar Asik doesn't? Because Omar Asik
offense
gives you rebounds, but Omar Asik can actually shoot free throws.
But also Howard gives you defense as well.
And I understand that, and Omar Asik does too.
Not as great as
but
Dwight
if you bring in a guy like Josh Smith, you have even more offense then, and another weapon.
Not down low. You have to see that his team is so perimeter orientated. You need a guy down low to draw defenders.
I'm seeing a team where you can get Dwight Howard and have issues at power forward, or you can go with Omar Asik and get Josh Smith. I would rather have that and become more of a team because I'd rather have more guys I can rely on. Dwight Howard's a guy who's shown in the postseason you can't exactly rely on him.
I would take Dwight Howard over Josh Smith if you're going to give somebody max money. I'm saying
Dwight Howard versus Omar Asik and Josh Smith.
I would take Omar Asik off the bench and I would start Howard. I would go.
He's making too much money. 3 years, $25.1 million contract.
Well, yeah, I think Lynn's making too much money too. But you said that maybe they can go after Chris Paul. Would you not start Chris Paul because Jeremy Lin's making a lot of money?
I don't think Houston.
You can't worry about the money.
I don't think Houston's going to go after him. It was just a rumor they threw out there. All reports indicate that Houston wants Dwight Howard.
And I would do it, and I think that would make them a top 3 or 4 team in the Western Conference if they got Dwight Howard.
And the last point is for the Dallas Mavericks, they're going to have 2 players under contract after this upcoming year. It'll be Jerry Cunningham and Jay Crowder. Dirk Nowitzki's $23 million contract will be coming off the books soon, so they're in for a major free agency the following year. So they're talking about a 2-year plan for whoever comes to their team, so that'll be interesting there. But that'll wrap the show, the Sports Reporters Radio Show. I'm the host, AJ Speier, alongside Aubrey Gibert, signing out.